Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dakota Hufford. I'm the Communications and Program Coordinator here at CRBC, and I'm joined by Amy Barton, our Program and Stewardship Manager, and Eric Butler, our Riparian Program Manager. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's our first of four webinars, helping you to be a better steward of your land here in Clackamas County. I wanted to take a moment and recognize that many of us are joining from Oregon and Washington, and recognize that we are gathered on the unceded land of many Native peoples. I ask you to join me in acknowledging the many communities, their elders, both past and present, as well as their future generations. This acknowledgement demonstrates a commitment to beginning the process of working to dismantle the ongoing legacies of settler colonialism. We thank those who came before us for their stewardship of these lands and waters, and we are honored to have ongoing projects and collaborations with local tribes. And we recognize that this land acknowledgement is only a beginning. We commit to continued learning, to honor tribal sovereignty, and to support Indigenous leadership, knowledge, and stewardship of the Clackamas River now and into the future. Super quick little schedule. We'll talk about who CRBC is really quick. Then we'll talk about why moving away from lawns is so important. We'll get into some turf alternatives for the Pacific Northwest. We'll do a step-by-step how to transition, talk about some local examples, get into some challenges and lessons learned, and then just a little bit about backyard habitat and other resources, and then some time for Q&A. And again, we will be recording, so go ahead and leave yourself on mute, but please do feel free to pop questions into the chat, and we will get to them all at the end. So here at the Clackamas River Basin Council, our mission is to foster partnerships for clean water to improve fish and wildlife habitat and enhance the quality of life for those who live, work, and recreate within the Clackamas River Basin. We're a 501c3 nonprofit watershed council, and for the past 20 years, we've been invested in restoring and protecting the Clackamas River and its tributaries. We do this through many of our programs, but all of our work isn't possible without you. As we move through some of the information today, I invite you all to ponder these questions. How much of your yard is turf? What is your biggest barrier to replacing it? Do you know or have an idea of how much water your lawn uses during the summer? And if you never had to mow again, what would you do with all of that extra time? Feel free to pop answers in the chat if you feel so moved. I know for me, when I had to stop mowing lawn, it made a lot more room for my reality TV time. Okay, so why would we move away from lawns? When we talk about the idea of life after lawn, I do want to be clear that it's not about banning lawns or saying that all lawns are bad. It's more about asking why lawn became the default everywhere and whether it still makes sense for our yards or your yard today, especially here in the Pacific Northwest. Most of us inherited lawns, sometimes without ever choosing them, and they come with a set of environmental costs and practical headaches that a lot of people are feeling more acutely nowadays. Things like water use, chemicals, time, money, and just the effort of keeping something alive that doesn't really necessarily want to be there. The good news is that moving away from lawn doesn't mean giving anything up. In most cases, you actually get more flexibility, your yard becomes more resilient, and your yard becomes a better place for you to work and play. So some of the environmental reasons, one of the biggest ones is the difference between native roots and lawn roots. Most turf grass have very shallow roots, really often just a few inches deep, while native plants, on the other hand, tend to have super deep, complex root systems that have evolved with our soils over time and our seasonal rainfall patterns. These deeper roots do a few important things. They improve overall soil structure, and they help water soak in and infiltrate and keep that retention instead of just running off. They also make plants more drought resistant once they're established. And here in the Pacific Northwest, that's a big deal. We get a lot of rain really quick in the winter and less in the summer. So when we replace lawn with deeper rooted plants, we're essentially building a healthier soil that can hold on to water longer and has a better functionality all year round. Another major environmental reason to reduce lawn is what it takes to keep it looking perfect. Traditional lawns often rely on things like fertilizers, pesticides, and frequent watering. In our region, that means nutrients and chemicals can wash into storm drains, streams, and eventually rivers, especially during the rainy season. Lawns also offer a very little habitat for our wildlife here. It's usually one species kept at a short length with minimal food or shelter for insects, birds, or any of our other wildlife. When we diversify our landscapes even just a little bit, we reduce chemical inputs, support pollinators and beneficial insects, and create small pockets of habitat that add up across neighborhoods, helping with that habitat connectivity. You don't need a meadow to make a difference. Even mixed plantings around the edges of your yard can have a real impact. Many of the photos on this page are from the Urban Rewilding Project, and they show real examples of folks who have replaced their lawns with native plants. Some of the practical reasons one might want to turn away from a lawn is and can be sometimes the most motivating are things like lawns demanding constant attention. Sometimes, if you miss a water, depending on your area, sometimes if you miss a watering window or you mow at the wrong time or get hit with the heat wave, suddenly you're receding or having to fertilize or troubleshoot your turf. More diverse landscapes are just simply more forgiving. If one plant struggles, others can still look good. Maintenance becomes seasonal instead of weekly. Over time, people find they spend less money on water, fertilizers, and equipment in general, and less mental energy kind of worrying about if their lawn looks perfect. A lot of folks tell me that they don't miss mowing nearly as much as they thought they would, and what they gain instead is a yard that does feel more resilient. And I will hand it over to Eric now to talk about some alternatives and species specifics.
Yes, there are many styles of lawn alternatives out there, and you can really choose something that fits what your aesthetic and goals are, what your yard conditions are, and what you're hoping to get out of the space. You can choose, for instance, ground cover carpets or mobile meadows, eco lawns, and even kind of native meadows and flowering lawns. And it depends on what you're doing, but some options will require some degree of maintenance, maybe a couple mows a year, and there are others that may never need to be mowed at all. If you want a lawn to act like a lawn, though, which means that it's walkable, low, and really forgiving, you want to think in layers and mixes rather than going with kind of a single species. And so this is where you can integrate different kinds of grass like plants as well as spreading broadleaf plants that create a surface that's resilient but still looks intentional. Uh, So first, look at the ground cover carpet. This is really kind of a place where you don't have a lot of foot traffic going on. These are good for sunny areas, slopes, side yards, spaces under trees where there's filtered sunlight, but places where you're not really looking for kind of a high use turf grass effect, but want kind of that lawn look. And most of these really do not require any kind of mowing, very little upkeep. And they're also kind of a good excuse to let some of the moss and other kind of small, sort of weedy looking little plants fill in. Uh, One I really like is Rober's fescue. This is a bunch grass. It doesn't form a creeping carpet of turf like a lot of other grasses do, but it's you can plant it pretty densely, but and it creates kind of a good lawn look, but it still has a lot of spaces that you can fill with other things. Uh, if you're just looking for a really tough very little care ground cover. This evergreen kinnikinick is a great one. It's a woody plant, but it grows very low, very spreading. It's in the heath family. You can see that there are these attractive flowers on it. Evergreen foliage is very handsome looking. And yeah, it's one that it'll take a year or two to really get established, but once it's really settled in, it will grow pretty quickly. And all you have to do is just prune it into space if you want. We have a number of native stone crops that look great. These are great, fast, attractive ground covers for areas where you really don't want to have to do any kind of maintenance. They like really good drainage, but they really do not need much in the way of supplemental water, fertilizer, or anything like that. However, they're also pretty delicate, so if it's not a good choice for places that might where they might get stepped on. Wild strawberries, another fast spreading, quick ground cover if you just want to get some green on the ground really quickly. It does spread pretty quickly, but it's also pretty easy to keep maintained. It just needs a little bit of pruning. You don't need to run a lawnmower or anything over. It doesn't require a lot of effort to dig out or keep in check. Another one that's similar is Yerba Buena, which is plant in the mint family. You can see it's just kind of a spreading little vine, herbaceous vine. It's pretty easy to take care of, but it grows quickly and fills an area. If you're looking for more of a mowable meadow, this is kind of a more developed space, but this is kind of where you're looking for kind of a natural look. If you've got a larger yard, or if you're looking for kind of a more wild-looking space, a meadow is a great option. And this is where a place where you can use some kind of drier site sedges like California meadow sedge, a lot of attractive wildflowers, things like Oregon sunshine, which is that's another one that's very drought tolerant, low growing, kind of slow spreading. California oat grass is a very drought tolerant, another little bunch grass that's even smaller than the Romer's fescue. If you've got a spot that gets pretty wet during the spring, then dries out during the summer, camas is a great option. It's a very attractive, a bulb-like wildflowers that, if you're familiar with the growth habit of, say, daffodils or tulips or other things that put out a lot of that flower in the spring and then kind of go dormant during the summer, it's a similar one. And then yarrow is a great choice for these kinds of meadow spaces as well, because they put up with sun or part shade and kind of a wide variety of water conditions. And planting these pretty densely really helps them get established and helps the desirable natives kind of take over before the area can fill in with other things. And depending on the site, they can need regular water to establish, but a lot of these species really, once they kind of get situated, don't need a lot. If you're looking for something that really is kind of this turf grass setting, look for an eco lawn, and you can get sort of pre-mixed seed collections that will or you'll get seed mixes for different kinds of eco lawn, and these will typically include things like coastal red fescue, which is our native variety of red fescue, which is a popular turf grass. Again, the California meadow sedge can do well in some wetter spots, and then also these can have some form components, so you can have things like Spanish clover or true clover. You can have wild strawberry again. And then a lot of these eco lawn mixes will have dwarf varieties of yarrow that grow very low, but just have kind of this green carpet that fills in ground underneath the grass. And finally, if you're looking for kind of a sunny meadow where you really want to be a little more hands off and leave the space for the wildlife, if you want to attract birds, pollinators, things like that, and have a lot of the seasonal color, have the wildflower show and the seasonal, year-round seasonal interest. This is where you really want to lean on a lot of the stuff that's very attractive flowering. But again, don't forget to include some of the grasses and other things like that that add some nice structural elements and provide a lot of the interest during the winter months when the flowers are less active. So Oregon Sunshine again is a great one. Spring Branch clover is a very attractive native clover that does well in kind of wetter spots. Blue-eyed grass, despite the name, is actually a relative of iris. But it can form dense carpets. It's a great choice for rain gardens. Self-heal. A lot of people are familiar with the Eurasian self-heal that has kind of chunkier leaves. It shows up as sort of a lawn weed, but we have a native self-heal that also is very easy to grow and does very well in meadowscapes and even can integrate into eco lawns. Another one I really like is Pearly Everlasting. It's got kind of small, uh, understated flowers, but they dry out into this attractive seed. It has kind of like baby's breath that will persist long into the winter, and then has this kind of bluish, fuzzy foliage that's also very nice during the off season. And finally, if you've got kind of a woodlands environment, you've got a lot more shade. And these are areas where it's often really tough to get a successful lawn anyway, because turf grass really likes a lot of sun. And if it's not getting that, you're likely to get kind of scraggly looking grass with a lot of moss in. So if you're having a hard time growing lawn in a shady area, it's kind of a perfect opportunity to rip it out and put in kind of a native woodland floor. And wild strawberry, very versatile, but there are a lot of other forest understory plants that are great. We have native oxalis that's very attractive and is better behaved than the the kind of garden weed oxalis you often see. Bleeding heart is a very attractive wildflower. We've got a native one that's very easy to grow. Inside out flowers got great foliage and cute little flowers on it. Wild ginger is another very attractive foliage plant. The flowers are usually kind of hidden under the leaves, but they're very wild looking. If you ever have this growing in your garden, it's worth kind of peeking under the leaves when the flowers show up and take a look at them.
Okay. So now that we've talked about some of the specific alternatives that Eric's was sharing, I want to talk a little bit about how people actually make the switch away from lawn. This part is really important because one of the biggest reasons why people don't start isn't a lack of interest. Like they want to do this. It's just generally feeling overwhelmed. It's a really big project. But the good news is that you don't have to do everything at once and you don't have to do it perfectly. So this is a step-by-step process that works whether you're replacing like a small patch or your whole lawn, whatever you choose. So you can think of these next few steps as kind of a menu, not really a checklist. And you can move through these steps slowly over seasons or even over years. And I will keep saying this, but starting small is not failing, it's smart. Okay, so the best place to start is usually not the most visible or perfect part of your yard. It's kind of the problem area. So this might be a shady spot where grass never really grows, or a steep slope that's hard to mow, or a strip along the sidewalk, or just an area you already avoid because it's really annoying to maintain. Starting with smaller, low stakes areas lets you learn how your soil, sun, and your water actually behave without feeling overwhelmed by the process. It also builds confidence. So once that area starts to look good, people almost always want to expand. And if you're feeling stuck, I like to ask, where does grass already struggle? And that's your answer. That's where you want to start. So some pictures here. The one on the left is a picture of a yard that's been replaced with California oatgrass and Romer's fescue. And on the right, it's a small patch where I took out some grass at my own house and put in a little spot with some native ferns. So there's a few common ways to remove lawn, and the best one really depends on your own timeline and your own energy level. So one option is sheet mulching. You've probably heard of that before. So that's the photo in the upper right-hand corner. And if you want to use this method, we recommend using the brownest possible cardboard, little to no print, and no tape. And keep in mind that overdoing it can suffocate the soil, so just one layer is best. And another option is compost and mulch, which is one of the most popular methods here in the Pacific Northwest. It's maybe a little slower, but it improves soil over time and doesn't involve heavy equipment. And I do have personal experience with this method. The photo on the lower right is from my yard. I put 6 inches of wood chips that I got for free from Chip Drop on the grass, and it took care of the grass and yeah, honestly, fairly quickly. And if more grass started to come up, I would just kick some of the mulch next to it over it, and it took care of it. And then the fastest method is just sod removal. It gives you immediate access to the soil, which can be helpful if you're regrading or replanting right away, but it is more physical work. The photos on the bottom left are both of my yard before and after I took out the sod with a shovel. It did take some work to dig it out, but it was immediate, which was great. And I did need to break up the soil a little since I was planting right away, so I just used a pitchfork to kind of break it up. And then one other option is solarization. It can work in hot, sunny spots, but it can be less reliable in cooler or cloudy areas. To do this, you put down clear plastic during the hottest and sunniest times, and it can create kind of a greenhouse effect and kill the sod. And then lastly, another option you can try is to plant little patches of wildflowers or other native grasses inside your current lawn. And these can eventually spread and connect and reseed, but it might take some time and some maintenance, but it is an option if you want to go that gradual route. But no matter the method, the goal is the same, which is to stop the grass from competing with what you want to grow. Okay, step 3, this is often skipped, but it does make a huge difference. Most lawns have compacted soil from years of foot traffic and mowing, and when you remove the grass, it's a great opportunity to very lightly loosen the soil and add some organic matter like compost or biochar. These create some soil structure that hold water and nutrients and pore spaces for plant roots and soil organisms. Any soil type, from fast draining sand to heavy clay, can benefit from increased organic matter, but just keep in mind that it is possible to overdo it. And then always do a soil test before you start adding any extra amendments to your soil. So you can get commercial soil tests from an analytical lab, and that'll provide you with recommendations, but even just like a pH and a texture assessment test can work too. And you don't really, if you want to till, if you need to till, you don't really need to do it super deeply. In fact, it can cause more weed issues because you can really allow the seeds to get down in there. So just enough to improve drainage and root growth will work. And severely compacted soil might need more intensive intervention though. So you can use a broad fork or pitchfork to break up the soil compaction, or sow a deep rooted cover crop like a daikon radish. And honestly, dandelions are really great at breaking up hard soil too. When I replaced my lawn at my house, it had been used as a place where people had parked cars and drove on. So it was very compact from all the cars on it. So I did use a pitchfork to lightly loosen the areas and make it easier for water to get into the soil. And once I got the wood chips down, the moles really helped me out by providing some extra aeration. So they can be pesky, but they can be very beneficial too in helping with that compact soil. So healthy soil is the foundation of a low maintenance landscape. When the soil is alive and well structured, the plants establish faster, they need less water, and they'll just be generally more resilient overall. Okay, this is the fun part, but this is also where matching the right option to your site will really matter. So installing your plants. If you're seeding an eco lawn or a meadow mix, timing is key. Fall and early spring tend to work the best in the Pacific Northwest, and a good seed to soil contact is critical, as is proactive weed control. So you can get native seed packs from several local businesses. One thing that worked well for me was to put down several inches of wood chips and then several inches of compost soil on top, and then I seeded the bare compost, and this kept the grass and the weeds from growing up, and it gave the new plant something to root into. And if you're planting ground cover shrubs or perennials, pay attention to spacing. Plants might look small at first, but they will fill in. And planting densely helps with weed suppression too. The images here show a couple options. The photo on the left is a wildflower patch that I planted after an ivy removal project, so not grass in this case, but still the same idea. And the other image on the right is of a different yard that decided to plant only Romer's fescue. One recommendation is to group plants with similar water and light needs together. That one decision alone can make your maintenance much easier down the line. Okay, this is the last step, and it might be the most important step of all. Low maintenance does not necessarily mean no maintenance, especially in the first year. New plantings need water, weeding, and a little patience while they establish. And the timeline I like to share is year 1 is establishing, year 2 is filling in, and year 3 is when things really start to shine. If something doesn't work, that's just information. So it's not failure. Landscapes are living systems, and adjustment is part of the process. So I once planted several kinnikinick plants on a hill at my house, and it all died. But then I replaced it with yerba buena, and it took off, and it looks great. So this isn't always the case. A lot of the time, plants just do fine on the first go around, but just be prepared for, a learning process. Either way, the payoff is big. less mowing, less watering, more wildlife, and a yard that actually works with our climate instead of trying to fight it. And I do want to point out that the image on the right there is a lawn that Eric replaced with some native wildflowers. These are a couple local examples. They're all from my house, but I wanted to show you. Once I took the grass out, I tried several different things. So I tried some Romer's fescue, which took off really well, and I let the leaves grow in between. I also have several patches that are really wet that just have a really nice moss kind of little ground cover. It's spongy and no grass, looks great. And that's that yerba buena patch that I was talking about previously. It's pretty large. I want to say it's a 6 by 8 foot area. And then I got a couple stone crops and just broke them up into pieces and I sprinkled them in an area that was just bare soil and they really took off and filled in an area. So just wanted to share those little pictures with you of spaces that once were grass and are now little habitat areas.
Awesome. So, as we kind of wrap up here, I just wanted to talk a little bit about some challenges and lessons learned. We've touched on some of these, most of them throughout, but I think they're worth reiterating as we close. One of the biggest lessons learned is that it usually almost always looks worse before it looks better. In the first season, you might see cardboard edges if you chose to use that type of sheet mulching. Excuse me, have an excess amount of mulch in your yard or bare soil or small plants that haven't filled in yet. It's important to remember that this is temporary. It can be uncomfortable if you weren't expecting it. So setting your expectations early on really helps. And year one is an establishment year. It's not a perfection year. Weeds are another common challenge, especially during that first year. When you remove your lawn, you're waking up a seed bank that's been sitting there in the soil for years. So the good news is that this is the most intense early on, and dense planting, mulch, and patience really can dramatically reduce your weeds over time. And of course, always some hands-on weeding is probably always normal. Water is another misconception. Low water does not mean no water, especially during those establishment periods. New plantings definitely still need regular watering, even the native ones, and especially during the summer. And the real water savings come after the plants are established, when irrigation drops way down or disappears altogether. And another form of irrigation to consider is drip irrigation after establishment. The soil aspect also surprises people. Many lawns, as Amy had mentioned, have compacted the soil from decades of mowing and foot traffic. So just taking that little bit of extra time to improve your soil really can make a huge difference. HOAs and neighbor perceptions do come up a lot in conversations when I talk about moving away from lawns with folks. Naturalistic landscapes can be mistaken for neglect, or again, they look messy and they don't have clear visual cues. Simple things like defined edges, paths, kind of tidying and neating up your mulch, or even a small little sign explaining what you're doing can go a long way. Communication matters just as much as plants, so make sure you know your bylaws if you're in an HOA, and please always feel free to reach out to us if you need help communicating your lawn transition to either your HOA or your neighbors. Another lesson is that doing too much at once can be overwhelming. People who start small do, like those one little side strips or just a small problem area of your lawn, do tend to feel more successful and then are more likely to keep going. And finally, as we've mentioned, one of the nicest surprise is that people do not miss mowing and they gain some time back, and at the same time are creating a yard that's more aligned with our climate. I'm sure many folks have heard of the Backyard Habitat Certification Program, but I just wanted to throw this out there that they do have a certain percentage of lawn that's allowed, but they really want to see folks move away from lawns. So this is a program that you can consider enrolling in and getting involved in as you choose to move away from turf. They also give you a bunch of coupons for nurseries to help with that transition. A couple more resources are the Meadowscaping Handbook from the West Multnomah Soil and Water Conservation District. That will be in our list of resources as a PDF. Oregon State University Extension Service is An awesome resource as well. I have some of their links in the resources too, but feel free to just look them up. And then Oregon Flora as well. Just some closing thoughts. Start small and strategic. You don't have to do it all at once. Make sure you really look and focus on your soil as it's the foundation of success. And a yard can do so much more than look green. It can support pollinators, manage water, and give you some of that time back. My last final call to action is that here at Clackamas River Basin Council, we have a program called Parting with Pesticides. And you can go and fill out a form on our website and pledge to either be pesticide free or pesticide wise in your yard here if you are a resident of the Clackamas Basin. And we will send you a very cute little sign for your yard. It's a nice metal hardy sign that will last years and years. These are the resources. I'm going to send them out. I just wanted to let you all know that there will be a big list of them. Some of them are kind of overlapping, so it just depends on your style and who you want to hear from. But lots of lawn alternative species ideas, lots of design ideas. There's a couple podcasts in there, so look out for this in your email. And with that, we conclude our content portion of the webinar. If anybody has any comments, questions, we can address those now. Or you can always email us.
I'll go ahead and put the emails in the chat.
Wonderful. Thank you, Amy. Thanks, Gail. We can probably go ahead and stop the recording now if you want,
Okay.
Amy.
Yeah, sure.
Oh, Melanie has a question. Could you please recommend native plants that are not attractive to nutria? Eric, what do nutria hate?
Hmm. I think I have to do some more research on that and get back to you. Actually, they mostly eat herbaceous stuff, a lot of grasses and things like that. Yeah, I'll look into that some more and get back to you.
It's a great question.
I just looked it up while you were talking. It looks like they eat everything. A little bit of everything. Not picky.
That was kind of my initial, like I think yeah, they probably love everything. That's why they're so good at being here. But thank you for that question, Melanie. All right. If there are no other questions. Oh, how to
Oh,
get
the
to know.
Meadowscaping Handbook? Go ahead.
Yes, so
When
I
did
will
we?
include that in a follow-up email. Oh, we're talking over each other. Sorry. I have it as a PDF link, so I can pop that in the chat right now, and then it will also be sent out to you. One second. Here it is in the chat. Awesome. Well, thank y'all for joining us, and we hope to see you at the next one. Thanks, Melanie.
Thanks, Melanie. Thanks, Paul. Thanks,
Thanks,
Gail.
Paul.